Have we waited long enough, guys? I think we have.
Bethesda's been busy blowing the lid off Fallout 76 at this year's E3. We know that it's set in rural West Virginia, for example. Isn't that right, Gareth Evans, who's sitting here with me, Mike Williams?
It is.
It's a multiplayer game. It's a shared world online survival game described as entirely online. It's not an MMO, but it sounds a lot like the Destiny Division model, which is getting to be really big now. There's been a few games at this year's E3 that are doing it. In other words, when you play the game, you'll be on a map with a dozen or so other players. So it's not quite hundreds like you'd get in an MMO, but it is a live online environment with other players milling around. We know that it's out on November the 14th for PC, PS4 and Xbox. And it's based on Fallout 4's back-end tech, but modified for multiplayer. So on the topic of that multiplayer, it's going to be co-op. There's a lot. What they showed off was a lot of like cooperative type stuff, grouping up to take on missions and building settlements and stuff like that. But there is an element of PvP in there. Tell us how that works, guys.
Yeah, I mean, this PvP issue, it was a consideration for me when I first heard that it was a Fallout Online, and maybe other people too, like traditional fans of the series, won't have had to even think about this in the past. So this raises a lot of questions, right? And that's where we were before all this information comes out. So I've got some quotes here from Todd Howard's interview with Jeff Keighley at E3 this year. And Todd... All right, it comes out and says, first of all, we're still dialing the PvP. We don't want it to be griefy, but we want it to still have some drama there.
Well, that's good to hear. I don't want it to be griefy either.
Yeah.
I'm not into griefy.
And he says it really comes down to in-game incentives and then also the social incentives. But I would say that we don't want it to be griefy in any way, and then we'll dial it in so people can say, I don't want to deal with that. And that's exactly what I want to hear as a gamer who doesn't want to deal with that shit, right?
Exactly.
You want to just, I kind of want my traditional Fallout experience where you can go and get missions of people, and then it would be fun to see other people in another world, right? And if it was totally co-op, I would be on board. But the fact that this PvP is in there, and you could be griefed at any point, I'm guessing.
Yeah. The fact that he says he doesn't want it to be griefy is interesting to me, because that suggests there might be something in the way, or he's talking about it being rewards and what the motivation is. So if he's saying there's no real motivation to kill other people, people will still do it. People will still grief because that's just how people are. That's how they are in GTA Online.
That is absolutely true. However, the Fallout fans, the core fans, won't be used to that. I probably won't be doing that. They'll probably, if I'm like a good judge of like fan bases, I would have thought that the Fallout community is more kind of helping other people out than griefing people. So
what's interesting is there's no other human characters in the world at all other than players. So every human you encounter in the game will be a player, and everything else, every other NPC will be some form of like ghoul or creature or monster or whatever. So that tells that is there a dialogue system in there in that case? And if there's a dialogue system, are they like locking the PvP behind a dialogue? Do you have to talk to people before you can shoot them or something? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's like there could be ways of handling it is what I'm saying. So that's going to be interesting to see how that actually pans out. Other than that, the big part of Fallout since Bethesda took over the franchise with Fallout 3 is VATS, which is freezing time essentially, or slowing it down to an absolute crawl, and you can select which parts of the enemy's body to target with your attack, and then you can queue up like 3 or 4 attacks and it'll do it, and then you can level it up and improve it and stuff, and the odds of hitting and whatever, and you get like a percentage chance of hitting. But that is not going to work in a multiplayer environment, is it? So how is it going to work?
It's definitely not, and it's another consideration for people who think, obviously, if there's PvP in there and they're not traditional first-person shooter type of players, and they're not Twitch shooters, like some people will be on there Twitch shooting the hell out of them. And the thing, and yet, there's that fear, there's that consideration, well, how am I going to survive in this world? So Todd Howard's addressed that again in this interview. He says on the VATS, it lets you target and pick parts and all of that, but it's real time. It still looks great. The difference, obviously, is because it's real time, the basics of it, which are, I'm not the god of a Twitch shooter, but I'm good at lining up a headshot. I'm not that good at lining up a headshot, but I've made my character good at VATS. Oh, now I can do that. So it shows that you can level up your character in order to help you out in those situations and line up some shots. But it's in real time, so it's probably you have to act quickly. Yeah,
sure. You could like get yourself in a decent position to take a shot, fire up VATS, and then quickly select like head, arm, whatever, and then let rip and see if your character hits or not. So that again, something I do want to see in action to see how it actually handles. But VATS is in there. It's different this time. So it was
another one of the questions hanging over the whole thing when they announced online, and so he's addressed it here again. It feels I don't know. He's abated a lot of my fears. That's
absolutely. For sure. So in terms of setting, we've said it's in West Virginia, in the hills of rural West Virginia. In terms of timeline, it's actually 20 years after the bombs dropped, which is very early in this Fallout timeline, because Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout 4 were set 200 years after the bombs dropped. So everything has deteriorated a lot more, and things are a lot more wild and stuff. So there's a lot of, for example, greenery and things like that, and things aren't quite as destroyed and ruined in a lot of the location, which is very different, very interesting for the series. I think the inclusion of just basic inclusion of loads of hills and loads of trees make it feel a lot different to like a vast, barren kind of thing that you see when you step out of Vault 101 in Fallout 3.
I think their explanation for that in the no-clip documentary was that because it wasn't a highly populated area of West Virginia, not a lot of bombs fell there, which is why there's a lot of greenery still there. Although it was interesting that they said that because the radiation is still there, lots of radiation, that's why the justification for having these bigger monsters, and like they've lent into that local folklore thing and they've looked at what the some of the folklore monsters and stuff, and they've brought that forward, and the reasoning for that is like, well, they're not there in the later games because they might have died out because these mutations might not live on.
The mutations are so severe that they wouldn't survive long enough, which is
but
cool.
they are there. They're fresh mutations, different types of mutants, which is great.
So that's I like how they're just having fun with it and trying to change that sort of stuff around. And actually, that means as you emerge from the vault, you're actually the first survivors of the Great War. All the players who step out, you're not going to encounter settlements like Megaton and stuff like that, and places where communities have built up in this post-apocalyptic environment. There just isn't. You are the pioneers. You're coming out of the vaults for the first time. And on the topic of the vault as well, you're actually basically one of the first vaults that opens up, because Vault 76 was a control vault, which I like the idea of. Like in an experiment, you have a control group so that you give them placebos, or you don't actually do anything to them to compare the results to the people that you do stuff with. In the Fallout universe, obviously all the shelters, all the vault shelters are actually places where they experiment on everyone who's hiding in there in various ways. So this vault, there is no experiment. They just they take shelter for 20 years. They have a nice life down there, as well as you can have in a nuclear bunker, and then you let them out on time as planned, which is completely different to any of the other Fallout games. And you step out into this world as kind of pioneers. So I do like that as a setup. I think that's quite an interesting spin on it, rather than just trying to think up another different type of experiment.
Sure.
I like the focus on creatures, like you said, and the folklore, and like Mothman and stuff like that is there from West Virginian legends and folklore, which is ace. What do you think about these new creatures that they've chucked in there, which is a bit kind of like halfway between the ghouls that actually talk and sell you stuff in Fallout, and the feral ghouls which just want to rip your face off?
So you're talking about the Scorched, right?
Scorched.
The Scorched are this new like humanoid kind of faction, if you like, that they can shoot you, but they can't talk to you.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the balance where there's no raiders in the game, because the raiders in the lore haven't developed yet. They're not.
Yeah. It's only been 20 years, and the bomb, and there's been.
So yeah, exactly. So the Scorched are there to balance that out, to give you some sort of other challenge with people shooting you, NPCs shooting you essentially, because all the other humans are players. I like that idea. I think it's great. I think they're being creative here. They're taking, I don't know, they're writing the law as they go along, aren't they? They are the rules unto themselves, and I think they're making some good decisions here, I find.
They kind of seem like they're a bit rabid, but they can carry weapons, so you don't expect to have many encounters that aren't just shooting them in the face. That's basically what they're going to be there for. I think it's interesting that they said that they want every human you encounter to be another player, which gives you an idea as to how this game is going to be balanced in terms of, in the previous Bethesda games, it's a lot of enemy, human on human violence, whereas this is going to be a lot more creatures and stuff like that to actually encounter. Settlement building is back from Fallout 4, so you can build up your own base. But interestingly, you can actually pack it up and move it wherever you want to move it. And you can add, you can do all the Fallout settlement stuff that you could do in Fallout 4, adding defenses and stuff. And the base won't show up when you're not logged in. What do you think about this?
I think that's a good idea. The last thing you want is to be getting a notification your base is under attack.
I hate that sort of stuff.
Because someone else has found it and
got no time for that.
And I like the idea that you can jump from server to server with your base. I think it's a good idea. It's a new way of doing it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You're not locked to the single server, and they're talking about this seamless multiplayer thing as well, where if your friends are all joined your game, it will seamlessly work together, so you were on the same server and however.
Yeah, and there's character crossover as well, so there is going to be progression. There's no, it is a survival game, but it's not like, it's Fallout survival, it's not a hardcore survival. There's no permadeath. You keep your character progression and you take it with you, like you were just saying, you take it with you into your friends' games, and that there is motivation there for you to join your friends and play with them, because you'll keep progressing regardless, just as you would in your own game. Now the big kind of the big showpiece line that everyone keeps talking about is the fact that you can fire nukes at other players. So there are inactive nuclear silos littered throughout this map of West Virginia, which, by the way, is 4 times bigger than Fallout 4. So there's a lot of space.
Yes.
So within this map, there are nuclear silos, which, if you can find the launch codes, you can use to fire nukes basically anywhere on the map, anywhere you want, any random spot, any player settlement, any NPC camps, anywhere you want. You can just drop a nuke on it.
Yeah.
Bit of a bold move, this. So they didn't have to include it, but they have.
Yeah, I think Todd Howard's interested in, it's like his own little experiment, his own little Fallout experiment.
Vault,
he wants to see how people react with them, and the codes won't be readily available. I believe that the codes are spread out, so you might have to find them, and you might get a jigsaw piece of a code, and then eventually you build it up. And this is like end game stuff as well, so it won't be available from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It sounds pretty Sea of Thieves style, or you're working for a long time towards getting this thing put together, and then if you put this code together, you complete numerous quests, you find all the code numbers or whatever, and you can then launch the nuke, which is very end game. It would have to be very end game, wouldn't it?
Whether it blows up your settlement or not, I still got a question mark. I mean, there's still that thing that they haven't clarified, that whether you can blow up someone else's settlement.
I did read this one line where if you do nuke a settlement, or you nuke anyway, you can go in there and it'll be like a buffet of things to loot. Which, does that mean you're looting the stuff of other players? If other players have built up the settlement and then you nuke that settlement and you get to go there and there's loads of loot there, is that the other player's loot? How does that work? So that's maybe something that we could do with some more details on at this stage. And that is about it. There will actually be a beta before launch. Have you got anything else, Kaz?
Yeah, a couple of things to pick up from this interview. Talking about games as a service, he says he absolutely considers it a games as a service, and we always do too much stuff, and there's so much in this game that once we find out here's what the players like, or here's what they're missing and they want, since we built the system, our plan is to be adding to the game constantly, tweaking it and have that long-term interaction with our fans, which is it's the traditional games as a service thing as we know now. So this is done. Yeah, this is so they're thinking of rolling out these updates and things periodically. The other thing, it was mods as well. And mods was another question mark. The traditional players love about the Bethesda games is the mods, and now there's some speculation that there will be the reason they're going online because they don't want mods or whatever. But Todd Howard's committed to mods here. He says, quote, "We love mods, and we're 100% committed to doing that in Fallout 76 as well. We will not be able to do that at launch, though. You'll be able to have your own private world and be able to mod it and do all of that. We think with our games, that's where the long-term life of it really is. That is trickier when you get into an online world, but we're definitely committed to that. Just won't be at launch."
Okay.
Which is reassuring, right? And there's things in there saying you can have your own private world, which again, that appeals to me. I want my own private world, maybe, if I don't want to be griefed and have to deal with other people.
That is
That's
interesting,
good news, right?
I think they would be daft. They would be really daft to upset the modding community. They've done it a little bit. Well, they did do it a little bit with the Creation Club and all that sort of stuff, and maybe they clawed it back in various ways. But they do not want to upset those players, because they're the players that keep playing these games for years and years after they come out. So the fact that they want to make them happy is probably no surprise. I'm very glad to hear him say something like that at this stage. So which is good. So you'll be able to mod it, and like he says, that is a bit that they enjoy it, and I believe that. I believe that the developers who make the game like to see what other people do with it and have fun with it and stuff. So there you go.
And overall, I think it shows that they're very sensitive to their community, and they've heard some of the criticisms that they've had since when they announced the game would be online. And Todd Howard's coming out here and is addressing pretty much all of them, and he's got good answers for a lot of them.
I think the line "we've heard you loud and clear" is quite annoying at this stage, because you hear it from some developers over and over again, and yet there's no real action. So in here, he's actually kind of not saying that; he's just addressing things that people have brought up, which is good. Overall, are you looking forward to this now? Having seen all the...
I mean, obviously, I was one of the ones who was like, Bethesda, what have you done to one of my favourite series?
That's your gut reaction when you first saw it.
My gut reaction. And I will go out there and say now that I'm a lot more warmer on the idea of this Fallout. I haven't seen the No Click documentary in the way that Todd Howard spoke in this interview. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it now.
Yeah, I am as well. I think I was anyway. I'm a big sucker for the Fallout universe, and I do like a good shared world. I do like Destiny. I do like the Division, as they are, warts and all. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I can't wait to see more, and I can't wait to see some more details of how it all works, and like we were talking about the way settlements getting nuked and stuff. I just want some more information at this point. That's Fallout 76, which has been covered in depth at this year's E3. It's out on November the 14th for PC, PS4 and Xbox One. Let us know what you've seen of it so far down in the comments. Are you looking forward to it? Are you looking forward to the idea of a multiplayer Fallout? Please do let us know. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. There should be another video on your screens right now if you want to watch that, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Take advantage of the resulting Fallout to gather rare and valuable resources.